I've talked about Cinderella runs goaltenders have had and teams have had. And every time I do this, people will say, well, what about? And then they'll mention a goalie that didn't necessarily do well in the playoffs. So I thought, I'm going to talk about goaltenders that were sort of what we could argue flash in the pans, or goalies that won really, really great seasons. So some of these are flash in the pans, and some of them are goalies that just had one great season they wouldn't be able to live up to again. So in that vein, I found it easier throughout the 80s to find goaltenders than we're finding them now. Much easier. Goaltending is either more stable now, or GMs just understand better what they're looking for in a goaltender, and you don't find guys who may not stick around for very long. So, again, starting with the 1980-81 season, Mariola Sartre, who had 35 wins for the LA Kings that year, an 893 save percentage, and he was out of the league a few years later. He was not around for a very long time, but he was pretty darn good in 80-81. And then it was done. 81-82, and I remember this one. Dave Parro for the Washington Capitals. He played 52 games that year. He only played 77 in his career, but boy, was I excited to get his rookie card when I pulled it out of a pack. I thought, boy, this guy's going to be... And he's gone. Before I can finish that thought, he was gone out of the league. 82-83, I had no problem finding one either. And again, it's back to the Kings. Gary Laskowski played 46 games that year. He only played 59 in his career. So you look at the LA Kings, it was not Jonathan Quick time. It wasn't even Rogie Vachon time. And then people wonder why I say, Marcel Dionne didn't have great goaltending behind him throughout the 80s. He really didn't. And so Laskowski and Lassard were two guys that didn't last a tremendously long period of time. There were a lot of Kings goalies in the 80s I could have put on this list. 84-85 for Montreal, Steve Penny. Steve Penny played 54 games in 84-85. He only played 95 regular season games in his entire career. Of course, he also went on a really solid run in the playoffs, so he gets in as a playoff Cinderella run as well as being regular season. But the fact that over half of the games he played in his career were played in one season gets him on the board, as well as being kind of a flash in the pan. He was replaced by this Patrick Waugh guy a while after. 85-86, Pittsburgh's goalie of the future, Roberto Romano, arrived. And he put up 21 wins, 885 save percentage in 46 games. And a couple of years later, Roberto Romano's gone. So this is that goalie of the future jinx I've talked about doing videos of. I have a playlist. I have 2 videos in it. And honestly, at some point in time, I will get back into goalies of the future. I'll be digging through some old books of mine and coming up with names on the list for goalies of the future that just didn't make it. It feels like goaltenders, you have a greater fail rate. Again, this is why they don't get drafted in the first round very often. 86-87, Bob Mason. Bob Mason had a pretty good year. 20 wins, 890 save percentage for the Capitals. So it's the second time out of 3 the Capitals are on the board. And in the playoffs, 2-2 with a 937 save percentage and a 1.76 goals against. And Bob Mason was the goalie of record in that huge, very long Easter game between the Islanders and the Capitals that ended with LaFontaine's shot from the point. And famously, Mason his body he was ready to give out. And I again came out of that season thinking, well, Bob Mason's going to be... No. Nope. Much like Dave Parro, I was wrong before I could even finish the thought. Nope, Mason wasn't going to be the starter in Washington. 87-88, Mario Brunetta for the Quebec Nordiques stands out. 29 games played. He only played 40 in his entire career. So 87-88, I pulled Brunetta. And then 88-89, I couldn't find anybody. Couldn't find a goaltender that I went, that was a big number out of his career. 90-91, however, I found Peter Eng for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who would end up going to Edmonton in a trade. 56 games in 90-91. He only played 74 in his career in the NHL, 56 of them in 90-91. He was a decent enough goalie. It wasn't great, obviously, but I didn't think he was bad. This is where, goaltending, it's fickle. You really are as good as your last game. 91-92, and I had to put expansion under this because that's why Jarmo Myllys gets into as many games as he does. But he played 27 games in San Jose that year. He only played 32 as a goaltender in the NHL between his time in San Jose and I believe it was Minnesota before that. So Jarmo Myllys played 27 out of 32 games, and I went, yeah, that qualifies. Then I couldn't find anybody until the 93-94 season. Now, Dominick Rochelle had a decent, long enough career, but he won 29 games that year, had an .896 save percentage. He only won 77 in his career. So over a third of the wins he had in his entire career, he had that season. So Dominick Rochelle gets on the board. 94-95, Blaine Locker. Boy, I couldn't wait to get Locker cards. I thought the Loch Ness Monster was going to be great for Boston for a long time to come. 19-11-2 with the .902 save percentage. He only played 47 games in his entire career. After that year, it was just a crash the next season. And, yeah, that was something. And, of course, remember, that was the lockout-shortened season. Also a star of the lockout-shortened season that really hit in 95-96 was Jim Carey, the net detective. So you get the Loch Ness Monster and the net detective. What great nicknames, and they're both out. Carey played 71 games for the Capitals that year with a .906 save percentage. He won himself a Vezina as well. 172 games in his entire career, 71 of them that year. So he played 101 games before and after. Yeah, you want to talk about ultimate flashes in the pan. It's very likely I'll be using Jim Carey as the thumbnail for this video because he's the ultimate one. But there's one that other people might see as being even more so. Jose Theodore. Theodore had a very long career, and he was a good goaltender. He never matched up to that 2001-2002 season he had with Montreal. 30 wins, .931 save percentage, career save percentage of .911. So that year he was 20 points behind or above his career save percentage. Yeah, Theodore was never going to get back to that. And, I felt bad for Jose Theodore. I did. Because I thought he was a good goaltender. But again, after that .931 save percentage, he's never going to get back to that. So because of expectations being higher, that's where you end up in some trouble. 2003-2004, Andrew Raycroft, who looked pretty good for Boston as well. Another young goaltender for Boston. 29-18-9, and most importantly, a .926 save percentage. Looked like he was going to be the goaltender for Boston for some time to come. And then Toronto made them an offer they couldn't refuse, and he was gone. He had a bad year in between, though. It's not like they traded him after this .926 season. His career save percentage, .900. And that's including that .926 season. So outside of that season, he was below an .900 goaltender in the NHL. And he had a really brutal season with the Toronto Maple Leafs after they acquired him. Alex Auld for Vancouver in 2005-2006. This is the season that allows them to trade Auld in a package that would include Roberto Luongo coming back the other way. Auld played 67 games that year, .902 save percentage. He played well. I'm going to say right now, he played well. He was a good goaltender. He only played 237 games in his career, and again, 67 of them were that year. So he went to Florida with the expectation that he wasn't going to be Luongo, but he'd be the starter, and then it just didn't quite work out. And yeah, so Auld's on the board. Because again, he had a good year there. 2006-2007, a 33-year-old Frederick Norina comes over, plays 55 games for Columbus. Again, he was 33 years old when he came over. He played 100 games in his career, and he's gone. And yeah, he stands out for the fact that Columbus said, yeah, we'll hand the net to him. We'll see what happens. Now, you're going to notice Steve Mason's not on the board. I could not put Steve Mason on the board because he did have that great rookie season, but he had other good seasons as well where his statistics were really close to that to his numbers in his rookie year. So this is the thing. If you're looking for a goalie, well, this guy had a really good year. If they had multiple really good years, they're probably not going to be on the board. The only guy that you could argue had multiple really good years would be Jose Theodore. And even that, to me, that one season with the 30 wins in 2001-2002 was just, he was playing out of his mind that year. 2009-2010, Jeff Delorier for the Edmonton Oilers. Remember Jeff Delorier? Played 48 games that year. He only played 62 in his entire career. 48 of them that one year. He was their starter, and then he was gone. And so that definitely qualifies as flash in the pan, however you want to term it. So yeah, and then there's a drought right up until 2014-2015 when the ultimate flash in the pan shows up. Whatever terminology you want to use, the word comes to my mind after a while. And Andrew Hammond, yep, 1-2 was his record. 20 wins, 1 loss, 2 overtime losses, .941 save percentage. And it turned out to be kind of fool's gold. Once the playoffs started, it wasn't going to happen. 27 wins in his entire career in the National Hockey League, 20 of them right there. So when I talk about flash in the pan goalies, when I talk about Cinderella runs, Everybody brings up Andrew Hammond. Why isn't Hammond on the list? Because Hammond, it was regular season. Playoffs, it didn't happen. Regular season, it did. So that's why Hammond hasn't been mentioned until this video. And absolutely, when you're talking about flash in the pan goaltenders, he qualifies. 20 wins out of his 20 in his career were all in that one run that he had there. 2016-2017 is the most recent I was able to find. Honorable mention to Scott Foster, because somebody will mention Scott Foster. If you mention David Ayres, I swear, congratulations on mentioning David Ayres, but if you look at the actual numbers, Ayres' numbers were more a reflection of Toronto not getting shots than Ayres really stealing the game. So you want to throw that out there, you can. Calvin Pickard, 2016-2017, played 50 games, .904 save percentage. Miserable season for the Colorado Avalanche. Pickard was thrown in as the guy who ended up starting a majority of games when due to injury. And I thought he played well, but he's only played 107 games in his entire career in the NHL to date. And the last time he was in was with Detroit. He didn't look very good. He's cleared waivers, hasn't had a problem clearing waivers. He didn't have a problem clearing waivers once Vegas got rid of him. And you know, it's really strange how Pickard, right after the 2017 season, gets picked up by Vegas, and then Vegas waives him, and they bring in Subban instead, which was the warning sign that maybe Pickard was going to be that flash in the pan. So there you go. Let me know your picks. So any other goalies you want. Again, I wanted to put Pokey Reddick, Daniel Berthiaume, other guys like that up there, but if they played multiple years of the same number of games, to me, that's not quite a flash in the pan. A guy who plays multiple seasons, I can't put up multiple seasons on this board, even though there was definitely room for it. I was worried at the beginning I wouldn't have room for everybody, but it became quite obvious to me as I went along there weren't going to be nearly as many flash in the pan goalies as I had anticipated. So let me know your ideas and your thoughts and who you would throw on the board. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.